Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is Taste of History Blend by Harney and Sons, which they did alongside with the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I made a very nice tin, but I don't have that with me right now. I just thought that would be a good idea because my nails look terrible today. Because I'm going to do a little bit of British history today, but I'm mainly focusing on the mystery novels that I've been reading. So it's a tea and mystery post, and I did read some mysteries as a result of March Mystery Madness. But I'm also going to talk about the history book that I read. So there you go. So let us get started. And the first book I'm going to speak of is actually historical mystery, so it goes hand in hand. It says on the cover, A Mystery of 1920s India, which is what it is. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing this particular word. If I do pronounce anything wrong, those of you who know a little bit more about pronunciation of places and names in India, you know who you are. Feel free to correct me kindly. Um, the Mistress of Bhatia House by Sujata Massey. So this is the next installment. I think it's the fourth book. I believe it's the fourth book. And our main character is Perveen Mistry. She is a lawyer, but kind of restricted because there's a lot of things at this point in 1920s India that women are not allowed to participate with in the legal community, such as going before a judge, which is something she does try in this book to somewhat humiliating effect, which is part of one of her challenges. But she works at her father's firm, and her father has a lot of faith in her, and does let her do a lot more than some would. So she gets to do a lot of work, and he's very supportive of it. But once in a while, she goes out to sort of investigate things that happen. He's not always pleased with it, but he's not firmly opposed either. He's just a little concerned, not just for her safety, which he is, but also just for the reputation of the firm and everything else, I suppose. But it's a very I do like the premise because it is a very interesting time in India. Still the, I guess, colonial time, but there's a lot of pushback. Um, it's a time where people are getting more opportunities, but there's still so many restrictions, and there is such a lot of diversity because it takes place in what Mumbai used to be called Bombay, where there were so many different groups, and it would help if you knew a lot about those groups if you were someone like Praveen, but it's also a struggle because it's having to know how to approach people in different ways and having to know when not to get involved with certain things. So she is of the Parsi community, which is a group of people that are currently still existing, very much so, mainly in India, and they are Zoroastrians. So she's pretty well off, but and so she doesn't have some of the restrictions, say, of maybe like diet restrictions, like say Hindu, Muslims, etc. So, but then there's other things that they live by, and certain things that they won't get involved with. So I find that interesting. I don't know. I find the study of different beliefs and cultures fascinating, and it does have something to do with the mystery most of the time. Perveen is sent by her sister-in-law, who just had a baby, to this home where they're raising money for a charity, for hospital-related charity. And while there, a little boy who is like I guess the one who's going to inherit everything because they're a well-off family, he somehow catches on fire, and a maid actually helps him put it out, but she also gets injured herself. And so, yes, so Praveen was sent to bring her sister-in-law's contribution. So she's there on hand to see this, and then of course something's gonna happen. So her so later on, Praveen finds out that this same did I say maid? It's more of like a nanny, I guess you'd say. Um, Still of a servant class, which is kind of important because she gets arrested and there's really no one to represent her, and really unfair charge because the name of the person who reported her for a crime doesn't seem to be existent. And so Praveen's doing everything that she can to help her out, but there's so many problems because there's certain things that her now client doesn't she doesn't really want to talk about it because it's a shame, and her family want to be supportive, but they're also afraid of being stained by her reputation. So there's so many little things at stake that Perveen has to navigate. And at the same time, there's a little bit of trouble at home because her sister-in-law just had a baby girl, but her sister-in-law seems to be a little I'm assuming it's postpartum depression. So there's a lot of um just troubles at home, and Praveen has to deal with that also, and also with the realities of the fact that she might never be a mother because she's part of a marriage that ended, and in those days I guess it was kind of hard to just get a divorce, even if it was a situation that might have merited it. But so she's dealing with that, and there is a death that at in the same household that this nanny had come from, and it looks to be a murder, and the people who are being accused of the possible murder are also it's completely unfair. There's a lot of different I keep wanting to say the word navigate, but there's a lot of different troubles, especially in this particular book. It's especially pertaining to women, the choices that women can make and not make, and the careers that they can have, but they still won't be trusted in their careers. I don't know. It's hard to say anything without giving away things. It's always the hardest part with me speaking of mysteries. But the point is, it really was a great story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There were parts I felt the book was a little too long. I tend to think most mystery novels could be at most 300 pages, and usually that's enough. But so there were parts that seemed to drag on a little bit, so it wasn't the perfect book to me. But I love the descriptions. I did think the plot was a little hard sometimes to keep up with, just because it was almost too twisty and turny, not in a thriller way, but just like, why would this happen? Why would this person do that? What on earth does that mean? But once it was pulled together, I got it, and I'm going to continue reading this series because I really did enjoy it, though. Anyway, I hope that made sense. That was the first book I finished, so it's been weeks now, and my thoughts. I kept meaning to actually do this sooner, so yeah. The next book is the next. I believe this is actually the 9th book, so I was keeping up with the number 9 theme of March Mystery Madness. A little sip. Very nice. And this is The Sign of Four Spirits by Vicky Delaney. This is the next in they call it the Sherlock Holmes bookshop mystery. The main character is and our detective, just like Perveen Mistry was kind of like a detective without actually being one, is Gemma Doyle. She co-runs this Sherlock Holmes bookshop that is in Cape Cod, and in a very touristy area. Now it's during a busy time, and she actually co-owns it with her great uncle, who is always traveling. And I think that's one of the things that's getting to be annoying to me about this series. It's still interesting enough and cozy enough that I want to keep going with it. I didn't feel, just in comparison, Mistress to Bhatia House didn't feel as cozy of a mystery. It had just backtrack a little bit, a similar vibe to the Matthew Shardlake mysteries by C.J. Sansom, except that took place in Tudor times, but it's still kind of similar in an attorney investigating things, also dealing with some opposition. Mainly for him, it's because he's a hunchback and he used to work for Cromwell. But I thought that was sort of slightly on a par with what Perveen is dealing with. In this case, Gemma Doyle is, like I said, she is a partial business. I don't know if she's the business owner or business manager, whatever you want to call it, of this bookshop, and it's it's not as many things to navigate in terms of opposition. Like, no one would question her running a business, and at this point, no one's really questioning her helping out in investigations, because her boyfriend detective he just doesn't want her to get in danger. And another detective who is kind of like the Lestrade, if you've read any of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, she was at first very against Gemma, but now she's sort of on board, grudgingly so, but same as Lestrade was in the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, where he starts to rely a little bit on Sherlock Holmes to help out. And so I like that because there's a little progress. It's not the same feeling of the constant same thing to have to deal with in each book. Um, but yes, like I said, the fact that her great uncle never actually makes an appearance by except by like text messaging, it's, I don't know, that has become a little tired for me. I do wish they would give that up. I don't, I've never really liked the a character who never really shows up on the screen or in a book. It doesn't do it for me. It's one of the reasons I didn't really like Charlie's Angels. Sorry if you do. And almost every show there's like that. Is it a trope? I don't know what you want to call it, but it gets old for me. And I think that it would be nice this time in the next book, perhaps, for him to just show up and make an appearance and just be there and be part of it. I mean, is that too much to ask for? Anyway, so similar to what this title says, the theme of this one is dealing with types of spiritism, because there is a related sort of convention happening nearby, and Gemma is cashing in on it, in that she knew that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, even though he wrote one of the most rational characters in fiction, he was very much into spiritualism. He was actually believing that a couple of girls, or at least he wanted to believe anyway, that a couple of girls saw some fairies in the garden and took pictures of them. But she knows this and knows that there were books about his interest in that subject. So she's able to make a lot of sales. However, Gemma's really not interested in any of that sort of thing, but she is invited by friends and very, very begrudgingly goes to a seance. However, she actually is left out of the room because of reasons, and during the procedures, the what do you call it, the medium, whatever, dies, and it looks to be murder. And so Gemma has to go by what she heard, because obviously it was dark when it happened and stormy and all that. And this is a thing that I don't care for. The last book, I think it was the last book in the series, had like, oh, there might be ghosts, but it's a Scooby-Doo ending. I really don't want to read about seances. I don't want to read about these sort of things. And even though, of course, she puts the rational into it, and, again, like I say, the Scooby-Doo ending, I am getting tired of it. I don't like to, this is just not my thing. So I feel like if the next book even has hints of that, I might just stop there, because it's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me for keep going, I don't know that your perspective may be different, but like that was one of the things I didn't care for with some Agatha Christie books or adaptations. It's just not for me. Even one of the Dorothy Sayers books I read had a little bit of that, and just no thank you. So it wasn't my favorite of the series. It had its moments. Like I said, it has its cozy moments because her business partner is her, they share space. Well, they're kind of next door, but they share the business in some ways, because her business partner, Jane, runs a tea room, which I love. So the descriptions of the afternoon teas makes me very happy. And I was also happy that there's across the street from the bookshop, there is a shop, I think it's like some sort of gift shop, I forgot what it is, that is run by a woman who is so annoying in all the series, that I was so glad that there was maybe a mention of her, but she didn't make an appearance. I'm like, thank you. I was so tired of hearing from her. So there were definitely some improvements. I thought Gemma was not as insufferable as she can be. There was a moment where she did her little master disguise bit, which is inspired by Sherlock Holmes himself, because he was always able to like put some type of stage makeup on and look different, and be able to do investigations that way. So that was entertaining to read about. And of course, the descriptions of her two dogs is delightful. And also she has a cat in the bookshop named Moriarty, who inexplicably hates her, which is kind of funny. Moriarty reminds me of a meaner version of my cat Janie, who can be very sweet sometimes, but I just can't get her to completely warm up to me. So slightly relatable. But yeah, I thought it was okay, but I don't know. I'm getting a little So the last mystery that I read was actually not a novel, but a collection, sorry, sinuses, a collection of short stories. It's called England's Finest by Christopher Fowler. Um, so this is another Bryant and May book. And if you've watched me make videos about mystery books, I've talked a lot about Christopher Fowler's series. This is only besides his memoir, which I read quite recently. It's the only fiction of his that I've read. Well, the memoir isn't fiction, so there you go. But it I know he's written other books, but this is what I've been interested in, and it's about two geriatric. The exact age isn't really said, but they're up there. Bryant and May. Arthur Bryant is a little bit older, and he is the real brains of the group. He is the one who almost always comes up with the solution, and he usually first goes with the histories of England and London and other things in order to come up with the answer, even though it helps him with his investigation, but usually it's just human nature that ends up being the deal. And John May is more of the people person, so they really do balance each other out very well. And then there's a whole group of other police detectives and police people at the Peculiar Crimes Unit, which is a much put upon group that doesn't get a lot of support, but they investigate just peculiar crimes, things that other police departments don't really want to deal with. And so this book is not, like I said, it's not a novel. It's a collection of short stories. I think there might have been some that would have been novels, but then Christopher Fowler realized he didn't want to stretch it out too much, so he just put this in this collection. It's actually his second short story collection of Bryant and May. The first one I haven't read yet. It's called, I think, London's Glory. So I got to get a hold of that. I can't find it at the library. Maybe in an ebook. So maybe will I do an ebook version of it? We'll see. Stay tuned. But I like this because actually the series was ended before Christopher Fowler died. So he did end the series quite, with a lot of finality. So it was good to have a little more of this group. What I liked about it, it mostly took place in the semi-present day, but there were a couple of times that they went retro, and there was one story that was like swinging 60s time in London, and I had fun with it. I also liked, because there are other people, again, the Peculiar Crimes Unit, and they gave them a little more of a chance to shine. Mostly Janice Longbright, who is this, I don't know how they describe her, as sort of dressed like, almost like a pinup girl. She wears a lot of these vintage clothes. She's, like, or maybe more bombshell, whatever you want to call it, a slightly curvy, character, but I've always liked her because she puts up with Arthur Bryant and his things, his foibles, and all kinds of eccentricities so well. But she's quite intelligent in her own right. So it was nice that she actually did investigate on her own at least one of the stories, and there was a couple other stories that she had a big part in, more than usual. So I was gratified, I guess you could say, to see that. So yes, I thought it was a very good collection, and it solidifies my determination that I'm not a big short story person, but with mysteries it's usually the exception, because there's something about mysteries where sometimes you don't need to go on and on and on, especially if you already know the characters, especially if you already know the personalities. You don't need to go for chapters and chapters and chapters. Sometimes it just works in a short story. I loved it. It's very London-y, and as you know, if you've watched me at all, I really do enjoy London very much. So yes, that was probably my favorite of the three mystery novels, although I did like the stories of all of them. So yeah. So now we're going to history. They rhyme. I was going to take off my hat, but I could tell just by what you could see on the bottom over here, you could tell, I'm a mess and definitely have hat head. So never mind. I will just briefly discuss this book that I finished called Hunting the Falcon, Henry VIII, Anne Boleyn, and the Marriage That Shook Europe by John Guy and Julia Fox. Here it is. Hunting the Falcon. There it is. Anyway, the Falcon was her, Anne Boleyn's like badge. She had like a motto with a badge, was a falcon. So, I've read so many books about the Tudor era, especially about Henry VIII and Henry VIII and his wives. So you might say, why are you going to read yet another book? Well, I like the perspective because it was just mainly about the Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn relationship and their marriage. It gets a little bit into their early life, which is important because you do need to know their background, both of them, but especially Anne and where she came from and what she was involved with, having traveled to France and other parts of Europe before she got to know Henry and be at his court. It really influenced her, the person she was, and the way she thought she could make a difference, because she had a lot of influential women that became her role models, and that I think she really wanted to emulate in her own way and to make real changes in England. Unfortunately, she was going to marry Henry VIII, who would only listen to so much, and then if you didn't give him what he wanted, it didn't matter what you had in mind. Not great. But the fact that it says it shook Europe, some people like to say it didn't really make a big difference in Europe, but it did, because there were so many diplomatic issues. France and Spain, especially, constantly dealing with, having England in between, and England trying to, rise up and be the bigger the bigger one, but really can't, because Spain had the Holy Roman Emperor and France just kept, you know, winning in so many different ways. And then of course the split with Rome did actually shake Europe, because that was part of the whole Protestant Reformation in Europe, even though Henry VIII never was a full-on Protestant. He was definitely Catholic at heart, but he liked the idea of being the head of the Church of England. So, especially because it facilitated, did I say that word already? His split from Catherine of Aragon so that he could marry Anne. Yeah. So there was a little more detail this time about the different, dealing with the different lands and how that affected Europe and how it affected England. Always using Chapuis, Eustace Chapuis. I don't know if they pronounce the S. Some places they do and some they don't. He was the imperial ambassador. He worked for Charles the, I think, fifth of Spain, who obviously was not a fan of Anne Boleyn because, well, not obviously if you don't know, but his aunt was Catherine of Aragon, who was Henry VIII's first wife. So, so Chapuis also, though, had a lot of correspondence that was preserved. He was very gossipy and opinionated, but we learn a lot from him. Kind of entertaining. One of the things I always find impressive, though, is that he did pay attention to the trials when Anne finally was taken down, which was a very sad situation. But and there were remarks that he made that, you know what, are you for real? This trial, is nonsense. So he even knew that Anne was brought down on charges that were bogus, but he wasn't going to do anything to change it. So I find that interesting. I hear there's a book about him that I really got to figure out how to get my hands on. I'm not sure if it's translated to English or is available, but one day I'll find it. Anyway, I don't know what else to say about this book except, my thoughts about Anne Boleyn are varied. She's not my favorite person on the planet. There are certain times where she became a little bit too much, and I always figured maybe she could have toned down a little bit, and maybe she could have just split with Henry if things didn't work out and not gotten herself killed. But I also don't want to blame her because of the position she was in, and also because I think, like I said, I think she did want to make a difference. I think that she clashed with certain people like Thomas Cromwell, who was dissolving the monasteries for gain for people like the king. And Anne thought that the monies should really go to help the poor, which she's not wrong, but going up against Cromwell may not have been the best thought out thing to do. But I often try to figure out, why did she act that way? Was she just frustrated because things weren't going her way? Was she really that kind of person, that she was just, argumentative and troublesome? Maybe it was because, after having the pressure to have a son and having back-to-back pregnancies, most of which were failed pregnancies, maybe she was just really getting worn down. So I have sympathy for her. I don't look at her as this big homewrecker. I think the big homewrecker was Henry, honestly. Anyway, so I'm rambling, but I think that if you want a story that just focuses in on the relationship between Anne and Henry, and doesn't go that far after the death of Anne either, because a lot of books just go on, just going for the rest of Henry's life. I think this is a good book, and it's not that long of a book. It looks kind of long, but it's actually a big chunk of the pages at the end are, index pages and etc. So this may not be such a big read if you're not looking for a massive tome in history. But if you're looking for a massive tome, this isn't it either. Anyway, yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't think it's my favorite. I don't think it'll be my favorite history book of the year, but it will definitely not be a least favorite. It was a good one. It was really good. So that is all for now for my reading. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts on it, if you might be more interested in reading these books. Let me know if you've read any good historical mysteries lately, or if you've read any good history books that you might want to recommend. And that is all for now. If you like talking about these subjects, if you want to see me in this crazy hat again, please feel free to like, subscribe, and all the things. So that is all for now. This is Catherine taking tea with Catherine. I forgot my name. Have a lovely tea and book-filled day.